spider with genetic mutation. Its red and blue skin color represents its super toxicity. It crawled onto the young man's hand and bit him with a snap. The sudden sting made the young man instinctively shake it off. Looking at the weird spider on the ground, the kind-hearted young man did not kill it, and a bright red bite mark was left on his hand. The young man did not care much at the time, but after returning home, he began to feel dizzy. At this time, he felt something was wrong with his whole body and fell directly to the ground. He quickly took the sheet to cover himself, and the wound on his hand was swollen. He could no longer hold on and closed his eyes. At this time, the genes in his body began to mutate gradually, and the genes of the super spider. His genes are being replaced. When he woke up the next day, something strange happened. He found that his myopia had actually healed. What was even more incredible to him was that he was originally skinny, but now his muscles were unusually developed. He felt full of strength and ran out before eating breakfast. Seeing that he was about to be late for school, he chased the school bus for 800 meters, but inexplicably tore off the school bus sticker. He had no choice but to stop. At lunchtime, he began to show his skills. At this time, his dream goddess Mary happened to pass by, and he immediately sensed danger. However, this scene was not shot with special effects, but the guy's operation successfully captured the goddess' attention. After returning to his seat, Peter found that the fork was stuck to his hand. What's more strange is that the fork can even draw silk. Before he could figure it out, the spider silk that was accidentally emitted stuck to the dinner plate again. While no one was paying attention, Peter tried to take the dinner plate off, but he accidentally threw it on the bully's head. This time he was doomed. Peter was so scared that he turned around and wanted to run away, but the dinner plate dragging behind him had already betrayed him. The school bully chased after him and wanted to settle the score with him. At this time, Peter suddenly realized that there was danger. With the activation of the spider sense, he captured all the movements around him, whether it was the flapping of mosquito wings. The sound was the saliva of the students drinking from the straw. Then, a huge fist came down fiercely, and Peter dodged it easily. This also made the school bully furious, and he came up to teach him a lesson. But Peter, who had spider sense, easily resolved all the attacks. In his eyes, the opponent's speed was as slow as a snail. Facing the school bully's aggressiveness, Peter punched him dozens of meters away. This punch was simply the momentum and strength of Bruce Lee. The classmates looked at him in disbelief, which made Peter realize something. Then, he ran out of the school in a panic and came to a hidden alley. Looking at the wrist with the function of spinning silk, and thinking about the situation of being bitten by a spider web, Peter finally understood at this moment. He slowly raised his palm, only to see that it was covered with dense hooks. Peter suddenly had an idea, and he tentatively put his fingers on the wall. As his hands kept crawling alternately, Peter accidentally unlocked the spider's climbing ability, which made Peter completely excited. He kept running and jumping between the buildings, and the jumping force was even 10 times stronger than Zhang Guowei, but soon he was in trouble. In front of him was a 100-meter-long street. If he wanted to cross it, he had to shoot spider silk, but this time it failed. Even if he shouted, "Open sesame," it was still useless. At the same time, the city's largest OS industry was developing a physical enhancer. It was only one step away from successful research and development, but the professor said that there were deficiencies in the experiment and they needed to go back to the formula stage. Hearing this, the boss, Norman, was immediately anxious. He decided to take the risk and use himself as an experiment. Then he drank the enhancer. He asked the professor to send him into the experimental chamber. As the green gas in the chamber spread rapidly, Norman's body functions were evolving rapidly, and his heart rate climbed to 180, but his body could no longer bear it, and he was shaking violently, and soon his heart stopped beating. The professor hurried in to give Norman CPR, and the instrument suddenly showed that his heartbeat function had recovered, but the next second Norman grabbed the professor's neck. So far, the villain Green Goblin was born, and Peter was still trying to launch spider silk. It seems that as long as he follows this gesture, he can spit out spider silk. From then on, he had the ability to fly over eaves and walls. The first thing he did with superpowers was to make money. He wanted to buy a luxury car because in this way he could take his favorite goddess for a ride. After all, he was just a child and had a strong vanity. So he decided to participate in an underground boxing match because the champion would receive a generous bonus. But before he set off, his uncle stopped him. It turned out that his uncle learned about Peter's fight at school, but Peter thought he was not wrong and the other party started it first. The uncle who was in his hand was worried about him and was afraid that he would go astray in the future, so he spoke to him earnestly. However, Peter, who was in his rebellious period, didn't listen to his uncle at all. He said, "You are not my father when you go back, so why do you control me?" After that, Peter came to the arena wearing the first rough spider suit, and his opponent was a muscular giant. The game officially started, but the strongman came up and missed. Peter jumped onto the octagonal cage in an instant, and then he didn't forget to mock the other party with words, which immediately angered the strong man and began to pounce on Peter. But in the end, Peter flexibly avoided them all. At this time, the audience gave the strong man a chair. Peter didn't even react, but was knocked down by the opponent. There were fierce cheers from the audience. These guys really didn't take it too seriously to watch the excitement, and even yelled try to kill Peter quickly. Seeing that the opponent was picking up the iron rod and was about to smash it down, at the critical moment, Peter directly used the Foshan Shadowless kick and kicked him several times in succession. The strong man was completely stunned, and finally Peter kicked with both feet. The strong man was no longer able to resist, and the audience suddenly cheered. At this moment, Peter felt that he was so handsome, but when he went to get the money, the other party only gave him $100 instead of the $3,000. It was because Peter only fought for 2 minutes instead of 3 minutes, which made Peter very angry. However, as soon as he left, his boss was robbed. The retribution came so quickly. Seeing the robber running towards the elevator, Peter kindly made way. Seeing the black-hearted businessman's frustrated expression, Peter felt secretly happy, but as soon as he walked out of the boxing gym, he had an ominous premonition. At this time, Peter saw a group of people watching him rush in a panic. But he found Ben lying in a pool of blood, dying. He learned that someone had shot Uncle Ben and robbed his car. Ben died before he could finish his words. Peter was completely furious and chased the criminals in the direction they fled. He jumped to the roof of the car with a few big jumps, punched through the roof, and then smashed the windshield with another punch. The car instantly lost control and crashed into an unfinished building. He grabbed the gangster and vented his anger violently. However, when he saw the other person's appearance clearly, Peter was stunned. This was the robber he had just let go. Just because of his one thought, he killed his uncle. Instantly, endless self-blame and regret surged in his heart. The gangster even wanted to take the opportunity to kill Peter, but he accidentally tripped over the steel pipe. He fell directly from a 100-meter-high building. What goes around comes around. Although he successfully avenged his uncle, he did not feel a bit of pleasure, because he began to understand what his uncle said to him, that with great power comes great responsibility, and that superpowers should not be wasted. He designed a new suit for himself, and from then on, in the city of New York, there was a superhero Spider-Man who fought crime everywhere. He also frightened the city's gangsters. Some people regarded him as an idol, while others said he was a freak and meddling in other people's business. However, he did not care at all and kept moving forward. How arrogant is the Green Goblin, Spider-Man's first villain? He was originally a billionaire. He started from scratch, had a superb IQ, and founded a high-tech weapons company. In order to obtain military investment, he took the risk of injecting a power enhancer that had not yet been successfully developed, but an accident occurred. Although his physical strength was enhanced several times, his evil personality was also infinitely magnified, causing him to become the Green Goblin who kills without blinking an eye. He first killed his colleagues and then killed the directors of his rival company. At the meeting, because of his psychological problems, the shareholders unanimously expelled him from the company, so he killed all the directors again, and he began to destroy with bloodshot eyes, unscrupulously wreaking havoc everywhere. Just then, Spider-Man appeared. He kicked the Green Goblin away, and then saved the child who was about to be hit by a big balloon. In the first battle, the two fought hard. Seeing that his goddess life was in danger, Peter first entangled the Green Goblin with a spider silk, and then destroyed his glider with one hand. In this way, Spider-Man defeated the Green Goblin for the first time, and the Green Goblin also saw the potential of Spider-Man. He used means to tie up Spider-Man, and he hoped that Spider-Man could cooperate with him, but was rejected by Spider-Man. The Green Goblin left a street in New York after saying something harsh. It was raining heavily, and Peter's goddess Mary was targeted by a group of gangsters. At the critical moment, Spider-Man felt relieved and saved him. Seeing the superhero who was admired by thousands of people being beaten, Mary kissed him. This scene also became a famous scene of Spider-Man. The next day, the Green Goblin set a fire, disguised as a victim, and successfully lured Spider-Man in. The Green Goblin invited him to join Spider-Man for the last time, and rejected him again. If he was not a friend, then he was an enemy. He took advantage of his surprise and threw many hidden weapons in an instant, but as Spider-Man was extremely agile, he was naturally able to deal with these. But as the Green Goblin continued to attack, Peter's arm was unfortunately scratched. Then he tore the Green Goblin with a pig, and then kicked him out with a fierce blow. With the help of the explosion at the fire scene, Peter took the opportunity to escape. However, what he never expected was that today was Thanksgiving. Norman brought his son to Peter's house as a guest, but happened to find the wound on Peter's arm. Norman immediately realized that Peter was Spider-Man, which also made him feel vengeful. So that night when Aunt May was praying, he turned into the Green Goblin and broke into Aunt May's house. Seeing such a terrifying monster in front of her, the old lady was scared to death on the spot and waited for Peter to come to the hospital. When he saw May, who was still in shock, he immediately realized that his identity had been leaked, so he quickly called the goddess, but what he heard from the other end was the Green Goblin's shrill laughter. When Peter arrived at the scene, the Green Goblin had already grabbed the goddess and stood on the elevated structure, while his other hand was holding a cable, and at the end of the rope was a car of innocent children. Now he wanted Peter to make a choice. There is always a price to pay for being a hero. As the Green Goblin loosened his hands, Peter had to make a choice immediately. He first jumped to catch the goddess and then grabbed the falling cable car. Spider-Man shot out spider silk and stuck it on the bridge, and everyone was temporarily saved. This immediately made the Green Goblin very angry. Just when he rushed up to kill Peter, he was suddenly hit on the head by something. But a group of onlookers on the bridge couldn't stand it anymore. With this group of people delaying time for him, Spider-Man successfully placed the cable car on a passing rescue boat. Before he could take a breath, he was tied up by the Green Goblin with a rope, and then he was thrown heavily into a deserted ruin. Before he could get up, a pumpkin bomb was thrown at him. Spider-Man was seriously injured by the explosion. At this time, he was no match for the Green Goblin. He was beaten mercilessly by the Green Goblin. The beaten Spider-Man could no longer stand up. Looking at the bloody Spider-Man on the ground, the Green Goblin began to be reckless. He insisted that after Peter died, he would slowly torture his goddess to death. It was this sentence that completely angered Peter. Spider-Man turned on the rampage mode and kicked the Green Goblin 100 meters away. Then he shot out spider silk to pull down the wall. As soon as the Green Goblin stood up, he was taken away by Spider-Man and then thrown to the ground, and launched a fierce counterattack against him. In just a few minutes, the Green Goblin was beaten to his knees and begged for mercy. The Green Goblin knew that he was no match for him, so he quickly took off his mask. Peter couldn't believe it because the Green Goblin was his friend's father. The Green Goblin begged desperately and pretended to regain his sanity. He blamed all the bad things on the evil personality. While begging Peter, he secretly pressed the switch, and the glider behind Peter gradually rose. But he never expected that Spider-Man had spider sense, and he was stabbed to death by his own glider. Before he died, he begged Peter not to tell his son that he was the Green Goblin. Spider-Man sent the Green Goblin's body back to his good friend's house, and this scene happened to be seen by his good friend Harry, which led Harry to mistakenly believe that Spider-Man killed his father. Peter also respected the Green Goblin's last wish and did not tell Harry the truth. At the Green Goblin's funeral, Peter comforted his friend, but Harry said that Spider-Man was the murderer of his father, and he vowed to make him pay for his father's crime with blood one day. Hearing his friend Tree's hatred, Peter chose to take it all on his own. After the truth was revealed, Mary confessed her love to Peter, but he reluctantly rejected her. She knew that being a superhero would definitely bring danger to the people around her, so she had to hide herself and move forward alone. The words in the book were deeply engraved in Peter's heart. He would continue to transform into Spider-Man, travel through the city, and fight all evil. Even if he was questioned, he would not be afraid and move forward against the wind.